Here we are. Okay, we're gonna go with this. Yay. Thank you everybody for being so patient. We had a small technical thing with Facebook. Facebook is not talking to Zoom today at all.
Yeah.
So we'll be sorry if you tried to log on to Facebook, that maybe you'll get to see the recording. I'm Rachel Patterson. I'm the director of Acting Studio Chicago. Yay. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. This is the ASC webinar series, episode 4 of Jammie Jams, where not only the host, but the guests are in their jammies. I would really like to shout out, nice jammies, Adria Dawn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, KaCee, Hudson, Director of DDO Chicago, Bailey Hayman, Agent, DDO Chicago, and the lovely Brittani Ward, Casting Director. I'm thrilled that you all have the time to give us and talk about the industry, and I think you guys are going to be talking a little bit about how Chicago-based actors can try to expand their reach into other markets. So I think that's a really useful, valuable topic. Just quickly, for those of you who've been wondering, we are now in our 3rd week of online classes at Acting Studio Chicago. Our next term begins the week of May 19th, which is going to be a fully online term. And we really hope everybody stays safe, stays creative, and hangs in there. And I thank you for coming. And I'm going to hand over the virtual mic now to the lovely Adria Dawn. Have fun, you guys. I'm excited to watch. Thank you.
Thanks, Yay, thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
You guys, Jammie Jam episode 4. I can't believe it. Time flies when I'm having fun with you. We have an awesome all-lady lineup for you tonight. Are you ready? Are you in your jammies, you guys out there joining us? Are you comfy? Okay, we're going to do this. So, how Chicago-based actors can compete in multiple markets. I don't know about you guys, but don't we all just want to jet to LA and shoot that pilot? Maybe hop on over to New York and get on the Broadway stage. Maybe we want to bounce to Atlanta. Hey, Tyler Perry, I'm right here. Or Santa Fe, maybe do a little Better Call Saul. Right, you guys? Well, let's introduce my fierce female guests and talk about the potential of becoming first-class jet setters when this plague is over. Okay, first off, I have the amazing KaCee Hudson in her jammies, and I also have Jackson in his jammies as well. Do you want to come and show us? Yeah, you're looking good. Thank you. What's your jammies say?
Watch it. Those are my snacks.
That's right. And you have a hood on yours, right, KaCee?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Let's
one
show.
thing, super comfy, too warm for today, really.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. A little bit about KaCee. She is the director of DDO Chicago. The Chicago branch opened about 1.5 years ago and represents artists for commercial, television, film, voiceover, print, and theater. DDO is a talent agency with offices in New York and LA as well. DDO stands for Dorothy Day Otis and has a long-standing history dating back to starting the LA branch in 1969. Hot damn, that's older than me. KaCee comes from both a casting and performance background. She became an agent in 2013. She also has casting experience, having worked with O'Connor Casting and also as a freelance casting director. I know that I can vouch for this personally when I say KaCee is known for her hard work, her personalized approach with each actor she reps, and her leadership and expertise are top notch. Thank you for being here, KaCee.
Thank you so much. So happy.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I also have the fantastic Bailey Hayman, who is an agent at DDO Chicago. Those guys work together. She loves working across all departments of the industry. Originally from Charlotte, North Carolina, Bailey left the South and studied theater at Northern Illinois University. Before DDO Chicago, Bailey worked as a theatrical agent and also has experience working as a voiceover script writer. I can also vouch for this when I say she absolutely loves working with actors and helping them reach their goals. And we love her down-to-earth energy and her amazing work ethic. Thank you, Bailey, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's rock the hood.
Oh, I already did it, but I will.
Did it? Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't see. Yeah, there you go. Okay, girl. Rounding up my all-star crew, I have the incredible casting director, Brittani Ward. Brittani grew up in Crystal Lake. She graduated from DePaul's digital cinema program. She moved to LA in 2011 and started out interning with many well-known casting directors, then got hired to work with some of those major LA players and more casting directors, including Carmen Cuba, Barbara Fiorentino, and Emmy winner Lorraine Mayfield. She's helped cast projects for Steven Soderbergh, you might have heard of him. She helped hire incredible actors, including Jon Voight, Sharon Stone, Chris Ludacris Bridges, and more. She moved back to Chicago not that long ago and continues to cast for projects both in LA and Chicago. Welcome, Brittani. Thanks for rocking your awesome jams.
Thank you.
Did you?
Oh
did
yeah, I have a hood.
see?
Okay, mine are a pit. It's a When Pigs Fly onesie.
Yep.
I love it.
Suit, and then wings. Some back here.
When Pigs Fly. Oh, that's a pretty good one, you guys.
I've had this for years.
Awesome.
Bailey texted me right before the meeting and said, "Do you have a onesie?" And I said, "I do, actually."
Excellent.
Very close.
So I've got 3 awesome ladies, and I also want you to know that your host holds a special place in her heart for LA. I lived and worked there for 10 years. Yes, it did. Raise the roof, LA. Okay, so let's get this Jam-a-lima Ding Dong started. So, KaCee, what would you say actors need to be doing here in Chicago first before agents will think of submitting them to other markets?
I think a big one is commitment. I mean, in general, you know, Chicago for a long time was a place where you could be what we call like a hobby actor, where you have a day job, you have a full career, and then you also act. You might go to some commercial auditions, maybe get a line in a movie or two, but I think the big difference between here in a market like LA is that to be an actor in LA, you can't just kind of do it on the side. You have to fully commit. And so that's really what I look for most when I'm looking to kind of expand someone's reach, as far as like what they should be and can be auditioning for. It's just a commitment of being able to, you know, go to the auditions that we send them on, and you know, turn around quick self tapes and have a really good idea of character and how to be in a scene with a person and feel you know, like a human. So I think just, you know, the basics of getting to explore a script, as well as like the logistical process of being available for auditions and having the motivation to keep going after a lot of no's.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. Brittani, what types of credits or training on a resume or clips on a reel help actors get seen in other markets, do you think?
Sure. First thing is legitimate TV credits. By legitimate, I mean like a speaking role on a pilot or a series that was produced by a major studio. So ABC, NBC, Fox, etc. Or a major streaming platform or network. So like Amazon, Netflix, Quibi, Apple TV, anything like that. Sometimes actors, you know, will shoot a spec pilot in town, or they'll work on a web series together, and that's amazing. If you have worked on every episode of a web series or did do a spec pilot that was produced independently, that is awesome. That should like totally yield some great footage for you, as long as it was well directed and well shot. That does not belong in the TV credit section of your resume. So stick to just those TV credits that are recognizable platforms. You don't want to have it say like series regular role on a web series unless you were a series regular on a project that was paying you series regular money and you had a contractual agreement as a series regular. You're not able to, you're not tricking anybody with that presentation. That's why I think just stick to the TV credits that you do have. On the feature film side, if you were in a feature film that went to Sundance or played at Tribeca or at South by, any of the major film festivals, that's very impressive. There's, you know, creative, subtle, professional ways to put a little asterisk on your resume and say, you know, official selection of this, or jury award winner film of this. And that's a great, that catches my eye on a resume. On the indie side, if you've worked as an actor on a feature film for a really recognizable director, even in a small role, especially a a principal role with a proper name. On Widows, for example, that Steve McQueen directed here, or on Candyman that Nia DaCosta directed here. Those things are very standout in terms of on the feature film side.
Yeah.
And then for formal training, I mean, there's a plethora of formal training, and my knowledge of what those programs are is certainly not comprehensive, but like I've got favorite ones of mine that stand out, like Carnegie Mellon in the States, or Savannah College of Art and Design is a favorite of mine. DePaul Theater School here locally, School at Steppenwolf. It doesn't have to necessarily be a 4-year college program. Like I think even when I was in LA, even before I'd moved back to Chicago and didn't really know quite what some of the local programs actually looked like on the day-to-day, I loved Second City training, IO training, School at Steppenwolf training, Northwestern, DePaul, etc. I think it's important to note that different casting directors are going to have different priorities in terms of how they evaluate this criteria in order. And they're not going to see any of it if they don't stop on your headshot first. Right. So the most important thing is to have a very up-to-date headshot. In terms of demo reels, kind of same thing. Some people might watch more demo reels than others. I probably watch them last after the headshot and the resume evaluation. And I really only watch clips for like about 10 seconds to hear somebody's voice and make an assessment as to whether they're a fit for a role that I'm looking for. But I would say that having, a really meaty guest star role on a TV series is fantastic. And if I'm looking for comedy and you have laugh out loud funny tape, that is very informative and helpful.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Bailey, I know that there are different territories that agencies cover. So how do you submit actors to other markets then? And how does that all work, territory and stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So kind of depending on how an actor is signed with us, like when we bring on an actor, we have them exclusively in the Midwest region. So if they don't have representation in other markets, we will submit basically wherever they'll take our submissions. So often breakdowns are posted nationally, and we're able to see what's being cast out of LA and New York or Atlanta or like the Santa Fe area. We're able to see all of those, and we'll submit wherever they'll take them. I previously joked, we used to call ourselves Agents Without Borders. So we're always submitting to every market we possibly can. Just how you would audition for something like that would look a little bit differently. So the first round of your audition is not going to be necessarily going into an office like it would be at Claire Simon's office or Cargie and Ross here in Chicago, but it would likely be a self-tape. And then depending on how that process would go, if you had a callback, they might send you some notes and you'd retape that, or eventually you might even go in, you might fly out to LA for a producer session. So we submit everywhere we possibly can, and we work really hard to get those. Those are some really exciting auditions for us. It's just how you might audition for it would look a little bit differently.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, KaCee, this is a question from Paul M. He asks, isn't there a normal bias towards local actors when casting? How do you anticipate the reduced mobility from the virus to affect long distance casting? This is for all of you, really.
Sure. I mean, the easy answer is that we don't really know how it's going to affect anything at this point. It's like all uncharted territory from everyone from here on out. So it's kind of going to be trial and error. The positives that I see coming out of this, there are definitely going to be more first round, if not all round self-tapes for all projects. I mean, we're thinking, TV, film, of course, theater, and as well as commercial. Even doing commercials, first rounds, or booking off tape is going to be the new norm, is what we're thinking and what we're already seeing happen, just to keep everyone safe and to not have crowded, waiting rooms full of actors. But as far as what that means for actors that are putting things on tape for other markets, is hopefully that it won't be there won't be a bias as opposed to being in the room in front of the casting director versus just being on tape, or in front of the casting director or producers potentially, versus just being on tape. If everyone is on tape, the hope is that they truly want to find the best actor for the role. The only time it ever interferes, of course, is if someone, I know there are certain casting directors who won't hire actors from the Midwest during the winter months because travel can be tricky. Is it snow, or, you know, but that's kind of all case by case. Even those casting directors who are a little bit more rigid on it will make exceptions. But that's the positive of what, you know, what we're all going through here is I think it's going to be a little bit more of an even playing field in a lot of ways as far as self-tapes go.
That's awesome. That's great to hear, you guys. Brittani, with your experience having casting sessions in LA and Chicago, what would you say the major differences between Chicago actors and LA actors are, the pros and cons?
Sure, that's a great question. A couple things. I'll start with some great pros for Chicago actors. They tend to be, the percentage of Chicago actors that have formal training and or theatrical experience is certainly higher relative to the percentage of LA actors that do, at least in my auditioning experience. You know, in LA, in a previous session, I might be seeing people who are models who are now trying to act, who are professional football players who are now starting to act, who are social media influencers, or people that are just like moved to LA to act from a very young age, right out of college or right out of high school, from all around the country, that maybe have like good natural instincts for the on-camera side of things, but don't necessarily have the ability to, they don't have the levels that you get from like that formal conservatory style training, or from having carried a character on stage for hours at a time, day in and day out. So the training side of Chicago actors is really valuable, as is just sort of the Midwestern work ethic. You know, when you tell people that you're from Chicago, there is a coolness to it. and especially in LA, they're like, oh, you guys work really hard in the Midwest. Like there's sort of like these positive biases in favor of Chicago professionals in general as well. So those two things are very positive. I think, you know, for me though, when I was in LA casting, and then also since I've been back in Chicago casting, the acting pool in Chicago, as well trained as it is not always competitive on camera with other regional markets, including LA and New York, but even Atlanta and maybe another regional market or two, who just tend to get more at bats at camera. So they have more experience doing this work and having it be for TV copy, or they have more access to comedy copy. But what I've found is a couple things that's actionable for actors to sort of work to undo on that front is I find that I've seen a lot of actors do their self-tapes and not make interesting enough choices on camera. And I think that comes from a fear of being too big, of coming from comedy training or theater training and being told like, you just need to do less, be smaller, be simpler, until they're doing nothing at all, besides just saying the lines. And so, you know, you can make a simple choice or a clear choice. It can be but it needs to be a strong choice. And if people are afraid of being too performative or going too big, that adjustment really happens in terms of like making the connection to the material internal, and not needing to help it along externally. And then you can make as big a choices as you want, build up as much intensity as you want, and it's going to be real because you're actually feeling it, and truth is truth. So those are two big differences on just the acting side.
Right.
And then I would also say, you know, the major market difference is the saturation. In LA, you know, you would go to LA, and it would be much harder to get representation than you think. It would be much harder to get good representation than you think. And then you might be going into an audition like twice a year. When you're new out there, when people don't know you out there. So I think that there's like a misconception that, you know, because there's so much opportunity, you're going to get all these opportunities, and there is so much more opportunity, but it's also that much more competitive.
Yes.
I find that actors in Chicago don't necessarily realize how amazing they have it with their reps and how much work and accessibility, like their agents do for them, and how much accessibility they have to them is taken for granted a little bit.
Cool. Thank you so much. That was great. Bailey, how often do you see actors actually book TV film jobs in other markets? And is there any success stories that you might want to share?
Yeah, sure. You know, we definitely see more Chicago bookings than out of town ones, but it's definitely something that we do see, I don't know if I could like give a number to it specifically, that's kind of challenging, but a way where you can increase your chances for getting an out of town or another market booking is if you were to be a local hire in one of those markets. Typically that's a lot of time with TV. TV moves so quickly, and they, you know, with shows that are shot in Los Angeles and in New York, they do have the gift of having a plethora of actors. So they're not, like, networks aren't always willing to fly people in or put them up. But if you have an address and you can get yourself out to one of those places, that can increase your chances of working on one of those sets. Yeah, I have a really fun success story, actually. I booked an actor on the Netflix show Daybreak, and it happened in that shot in Albuquerque, and that happened like very quickly. It was like I called him, and he had to be, they were flying him out to Albuquerque in less than 48 hours. He had to quit his job to start stage combat training, or fight combat training, and so they flew him down there to start rehearsals and to meet the cast and to do all of that. He was only supposed to be in like 3 episodes of this series and ended up being in all 10, which was really exciting.
Wow.
So that was a really fun, like, I was walking to a show and I was calling him. I was walking from the red line to stage 773 calling him like, yeah, dude, like, start doing laundry, you're gonna go. You're getting on a plane in like 30 hours. So that's one of my favorite stories of being an agent. That's certainly the one that comes to mind when I think of an out of Chicago booking.
That's great.
A fun note to add to that is he had auditioned like probably a month before.
Oh, he was never put on hold. It was very last minute. I got stressed that I missed like a hold, and he was supposed to be holding music. So I'm like sweating. You're like, oh, what did I do? What did I mess up? But yeah, that's a good point. He auditioned so long ago. It was like a month, and they just were like, yeah, he's approved. He's going.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That was cool. Very cool.
KaCee, you have clients who book Broadway shows. Can you talk about that process?
Sure. It's, it kind of looks different, I think, depending on the show. But for musical theater, they definitely need to see people in person for at least one round of the auditions. Depending on the show and really how long the show's been running, or their budget, or how the producer is feeling that, how generous the producer is feeling that day. Some people get flown to New York to attend callbacks, or even sometimes first round auditions if they're really, really interested. But most of the time what happens is they're able to put 1 or 2 rounds on tape here, and then either fly themselves out, or if they're, if producers are feeling generous, are flown to New York for last round or 2. Theater casting is pretty crazy, especially at the Broadway level. They tend to have multiple rounds. It's not just like an audition and a callback and you book it. It's like an audition and then retape with these new, this side. Oh, they want you to read this character. Okay, cool. Let's have them read for 3 more roles that they won't ever book.
Wow.
It's really there tends to be way more rounds than any on-camera audition. But for like on the straight theater side, those are usually we're able to usually negotiate like a Skype callback instead of an in-person. And then at the final round, if they're like one of the top 5 people for the role or so, then they will end up going in front of producers in the room. But again, it's kind of different based on case by case,
Right.
Some people end up booking shows from a totally different audition that they had in front of that director or those producers. And then they're, called and said, would you be interested in this show? I mean, it's kind of, it's hard to give guidance on it when it looks so different all the time.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of what makes it exciting. And what we're seeing in the last like year or year and a half, I would say, is a lot more theaters are willing to accept self-tapes for first rounds because they really just want the best people for the role. The only time it becomes really tricky is when there are dance calls, and that's really when they need to be seen in person.
Yeah.
And those are usually we're able to say, hey, this person could be at that audition, but is it possible that you'll take a self-tape, or is it possible that they'll do a Skype?
Yeah.
And casting directors are pretty quick to tell us, nope, they have to be here. Or,
Right.
yeah, totally, we'll accept a tape for this round.
Okay.
So
this is a question from Laura P, who says her favorite jammies are those that have pockets. She says, I love my pockets. You might even call me a pocket protector. Okay, Laura, Miss Pocket Protector.
I have pockets.
See,
I have pockets.
pockets, girl.
Same.
I have pockets as well. Okay, she asks, we already talked about working in multiple markets, but she says if you're submitting for new representation, we talked about being a local hire. She asks, should you let a potential agent know that you've got relatives to stay with in other markets when trying to get a new agent?
Yeah, I think that's great. It's only helpful to us when we're thinking about bringing someone on and ways in which we can utilize you and your work. So yeah, I would include that. Okay,
cool. Brittani, so we talked about self-tapes and having it be a level playing field, which I love, but I asked this and I'm like, should I ask this? Does out-of-town casting really watch all the tapes that get sent in?
Yeah, in my experience, yes. And any casting colleagues that I've worked with or know socially, yes. Can I speak for offices that maybe are less organized and like occasionally lose one or let someone slip through the cracks? No. But does that happen every once in a blue moon? It could, especially if like you're taking tapes over email. But in general, especially when you're doing large batches of self-tape requests. So if I selected 100 people from a breakdown early in a role and I sent out that EcoCast request, those self-tapes are coming back up onto the EcoCast as long as the person's following directions. And your reps would be, and it's pretty foolproof. I've actually also been helping a lot of actors with their open calls. So I've seen what it looks like on the actor side to upload EcoCast, and that you can check and double check and see what you've uploaded and reorder the tapes and rename them if you want and get confirmation email that says it's up there. It's up there. So then it's impossible to lose. If you're a casting director that requested self-tapes that are going to be viewed on EcoCast, you're just going down a long line. And it ties into an earlier question of, is there a bias against Chicago actors? And in this scenario, like these self-tapes really do equalize to a large degree. Any type of remote consideration equalizes things because, you're not necessarily cross-referencing to see where people are living as you're quickly watching the first 20 seconds of their self-tape. So yes, they do watch them all, probably, that come in, especially if they're, as long as they're in on time and follow the instructions, but they're not watching the entirety of them.
Okay.
Sure.
So people want to know this as well. And you guys, Bailey, KaCee, whoever jump in, if in casting or agents, when somebody gets called in to put themselves on tape and you tape them, say you call in like 10 actors, will all those tapes go to where they are supposed to go? Or will you, from my end, I would pick like the best few, but how does that process work? Like when you, is there a selection process that happens with the tapes that you receive or the tapes that you tape, the people that you tape?
Yeah. Do you want to? That's a great question. So we're not gonna send anything that doesn't show our actor in the best possible light, right? Like our job is to serve you on a silver platter, have you look your best. So if we have time to give you some notes or to have you read tape, we'll absolutely do that because we always want to put your best foot forward. But then that's kind of a moment where we might have to have a pretty honest conversation with one of our actors. But if someone's been requested, especially by casting, and it's a good tape, I'm not gonna not send something. We'll always send what is requested of us, and we'll always make sure that's turned in, unless they're passing on the audition for another reason. So we will pretty much always send what we receive, unless it's it's an issue of not your best work, and then maybe we'll ask for an extension. But we're pretty much sending all of the really strong options we have.
Okay, cool.
Then the kind of flip side of that is we do self-tape pitches as well in our office quite often. And only when the casting director really likes them.
Don't be scared of me. Don't be scared of me. Not.
But often, if it's a casting director that we have experience with who has said, hey, it's cool, put this person on tape that you really like, even though I didn't request them. If we have an open, if we have an open relationship with a casting office, we do try to put more people than requested per project, not necessarily per role, but per project. so that we can gather more material to pitch our actors with, but also so that we can, if a tape is great, we're gonna be able to pitch it right off the bat. I always tell actors though, like, I don't tell them when a tape is actually requested and when we're just trying to pitch them, because I want them to be able to give the same amount of effort to each tape, if not more, even more effort when we're trying to pitch a tape.
Yes.
But also because it's, you know, if it feels like on some level that might seem like a waste of time if they're just taping something that might not get sent on to casting. The way that we look at it is if it's a strong tape, we're going to utilize it in some way, shape, or form down the line, whether to pitch for a similar role or I mean, hopefully to pitch you on that role, you know. And we do that all the time. That's one of our top priorities, is to make sure that if people aren't being requested by casting, we're getting them on tape and seeing either what might be happening on, you know, in those auditions that we don't get to sit in all the time, to see, you know, if there are any notes that we could give them, any feedback that we can provide, to make that, you know, to help them grow and be more competitive the next time they tape. Also, just because of what Brittani was saying earlier about the at-bats, you know, Chicago actors do kind of lose out to other markets often because they just don't have enough experience getting 10 pages of dialogue before and going in and, you know, having to deliver a fully fleshed out character in 24 hours. So I think for us, one of our priorities is making sure our actors are getting those at bats and getting the experience, so that way when the actual requests come, they're ready, and they're delivering top-notch work and not sitting on a roster waiting for, you know, a self-tape every, you know, once a month. Ideally they're taking multiple times a week for things.
Can I add to that, Adria, real quick, just from the casting side of things? So that is a process that I fully support. We were laughing earlier because it is, I do have a reputation for being really harsh in receipt of unsolicited self-tapes during my own casting process. And the reason for that is a couple reasons. One, in many years, I've worked on projects that are really highly confidential, where like if somebody's sending that out, then that's like an infringement of their NDA, and it's kind of a problem in a different way. But in my own process too, I have really, really, really strong relationships with agents and managers, and I'm really thorough on going through submissions or getting back to them when I can. So if they ask me, and I'll say yes. And sometimes the rep will even say like, "Hey, I know you said he's wrong. Can I please have him tape for you anyway? I kind of need this." And that's always an automatic yes for me. So that's on the casting side. I'm pretty accessible with reps in that way. But that's why sometimes when unsolicited self-tapes come in, I'm not
I actually want
to
quote something about you that you said. And first of all, this is great knowledge for actors to hear about how much you guys, casting or agents, are just so much trying to help us. I love the at-bats and all that lingo. I think that's great. You said it's kind of crazy, Brittani, I'm quoting you, and the actors would never know, but I keep notes about different actors along with their old auditions, and I will scour them and put together a huge file of their work if I feel really passionately about them on a specific project. There are sometimes hour-long conversations about them and why I'm pushing so hard for someone. I think that's so awesome, you guys, that you know, people like Brittani just take the time to do that. Not everybody does do that. So along with your thoughts about how Chicago actors should really realize the work that's involved on your end, I think that's just, I wanted to share that with everybody.
Oh, thank you so much for finding that quote of mine. I love that quote.
Girl.
It's very flattering. Thank you so much.
Okay, Bailey, Angel R has a question. He says he has a very different look and he's not like most actors. He has alopecia, which leaves him virtually hairless. And he says, because I look different, I feel like I don't get as many opportunities as an actor who fits the mold. What can I do to get in front of CDs who book bigger roles?
That's a great question, and very individualized. You know, I think one of the things why I like working with actors as much as I do is that everyone we have is so unique and so different. And so we really tailor our representation of them to the individual. So I think something successful for him is having a relationship where you can have a really open and honest sort of dialogue and it feel like a dialogue with your representation, so that they know all about you, and that when they're putting you forward, they can put, you as a whole human being forward with those auditions and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, that's the way that KaCee and I like to work. We work very individually. We are very about individual goals, and we work very managerial in that way. So I would think with someone who is going to have to market themselves in kind of a different way like that is so specific, having a strong relationship with their representation would be ideal for them. So they feel like they have that kind of, like individualized approach.
Great.
Can I add something to that, Adria, just real quick? I know a lot of actors with alopecia, full body alopecia. Joe Gatt, I hired on The 100 when I was an associate. Obviously, Anthony on Barry right now is an incredibly successful actor with alopecia. But alopecia or any type of any limiting factor in terms of like the types of roles that you traditionally look like. I usually kind of tell actors that could be like you're a person you're a woman who's 6'2", or you are a little person, or I have a friend that I had on a panel recently who's been a burn survivor his whole life, and so half of his face is burned. So we talked a lot about typecasting, and when you have something very specific about the way you look or are, you might get less audition opportunities. You might get less self-tape opportunities, just in terms of like when people are casting a wide net unimaginatively. But when there is a role that's right for you, you have a much higher booking percentage. You have a much higher chance for those opportunities to actually convert to jobs, which is nice.
Thank you. I hope that helps, Angel. Tony R says, hi friends. Hi, Tony. In the distant future, I'm considering getting a second apartment in Atlanta. For the agents, do you rep any talent who live in multiple markets and have found a way to make that work?
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we do. It's with market like Atlanta specifically, I'll talk about that. Atlanta's a very insular market. So while we see a lot of Atlanta breakdowns and a lot of Atlanta projects come through on our end, there's a lot that's only open to Atlanta agents. Just like in Chicago, Chicago is very similar. For those agents who are not based in Chicago and do not have access to the Chicago breakdowns, they are only seeing what LA and New York casting directors put out for the Chicago project specifically. So Atlanta's kind of that way. So talking specifically about getting an apartment in Atlanta and splitting your time, I would then recommend probably, and obviously have a conversation with your rep and make sure that they're A, okay with this, and B, in support of, repping someone who's not in town all the time. But then my next step would be to find Atlanta representation on the ground, because that's just like how that market works. For places like New York and LA, it's a little bit different. We do have a lot more access. But that would definitely be, I mean, that's certainly something that we do at DDO, particularly because we are Jillian, our assistant Jillian says shy coastal. We're shy coastal at DDO because we have LA, New York, and Chicago offices. So for us, we do take people on that maybe split their time in New York or LA, but it's very case by case. Because we do represent people across the board. So we want to be able to submit them in town for commercial and theater and voiceover and, TV and film that specifically they need to be here to audition for most of the time. Okay. Yeah, so it's definitely case by case, but as long as it's a conversation that you are opening with your agent and not just like, hey, I'm doing this, hope you keep me on, then I think you'll find positive support of that. I think most agents are open to that.
Okay. Bailey, Michelle J has a question. Hey, Michelle. Speaking of, being on all the casting sites that we need to be working in different markets, she says, how important is it to spring for the pro account on IMDb? I've heard that casting directors use it a lot as a resource for casting. Is this true? To be clear, I'm asking if it's worth it to have a pro IMDb account in addition to the standard Actors Access and casting networks.
Sure, that's a good question. We typically recommend to get an IMDb Pro when you have more than one network credit. So until you're at the point where you have more than one network credit, we don't really, it's not really something that would financially like be the best. You're already paying for multiple sites at this point. We typically don't recommend it until it'll be a place with multiple network credits. I don't know if you disagree or agree, KaCee, but.
Oh, no. Yeah, no. I would be curious to hear what Brittany's thoughts are on IMDb.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested. I was interested in that answer, and that makes sense to me in terms of like the acting profile side of things, of needing to be able to put your representation up and your headshots. Like, when are you to a point where people are going to be searching for you in that way? So that makes sense. That makes sense to me. I don't disagree with that advice. My feeling is, beyond actors, any person that participates in the entertainment industry professionally, 100% needs an IMDb Pro account. Full stop. for research, there's like contact information, like there's contact information that you have access to. There's research. If you get an email from a name you don't know, instead of bothering your reps to say, hey, is this legitimate or is this person legitimate, you can like quickly look it up and look at their credits. There's important homework done on IMDb Pro, and it's very much industry standard to have access to that account. And that's not just for actors, that's filmmakers and anybody who considers themselves an entertainment professional.
Yeah, and just from an actor's standpoint, I'll just jump in a tiny bit. If you're just getting the account for you and not the pro, I still think, get your picture up there and fill out your a mini bio and all that, like complete your profile on there.
And make sure your reps are up to date. That's important. That's really important.
Oh yeah.
You have a page, your agents need to be up to date. It's like very irritating to like have that information be inaccurate, make a call or an email about somebody, and then find out a day later that they're not represented by that agency anymore.
Yeah. And sometimes your agent, like I know we do periodic, we were at one point doing it monthly. I think it's been a little bit longer than that now, but we do periodic checks to make sure that all of our talent are listed under us on IMDb. But I know that some actors who might have multiple reps, it gets a little confusing, and some get knocked off, and then some get added randomly, or they add an old profile. Or they add me at my old agency accidentally. So definitely make sure the reps are up to date, because I've had that complaint a few times before, and that's an easy fix.
Okay, great. Thanks, you guys. Maybe one or two questions before we play my game. Okay. Whitney M says, I'm moving to LA soon, but my partner will maintain our space here. What are some steps to take to prepare and also maintain relationships here? Who wants to take that?
It's a great question. I'm interested on, I had to think of an answer. I was thinking maybe the agents would have good advice for that for when their clients move.
No, I mean, usually if a person comes to us and says, hey, I'm thinking about moving to LA. Okay, great. First of all, what are you moving to LA for? Like, what are your expectations going in? And how long do you foresee yourself being there? I know a lot of actors are tempted to go, I'm going to go and spend a month out in LA auditioning. Well, that's really hard. That puts a lot of pressure on your rep, because then it's like, well, we have to get them in the room in this month-long time period. But also it doesn't really, the case scenario there is that you make a casting director fan. Now, when you come back to Chicago, hopefully, you'll be relevant in their brain still. But it can be really tough to spend shorter stints. So if you're talking like long-term, and your partner's staying here, you're going to be living there, indefinitely. I think that the most important things is to, again, manage your expectations. Make sure that you're going there to because you like LA, because people who move to LA and hate LA, I think it's silly. You don't need to live in LA. If you hate it, don't live there. Oh gosh, I lost my train of thought.
But no, those are all helpful suggestions. Yeah.
I think too, it's important to have like the, I agree. I agree that you don't have to move to LA to access the opportunities in LA. I think that's a really important thing to know. LA or New York or other places, especially with like this current global pandemic. We talked a lot about self-tapes. I'm not going to talk too much more about that. But for the past 5 years before this happened, more and more casting offices were using self-tapes as a first round of consideration. A lot of times people go to LA for pilot season during the traditional network pilot season, which is constantly expanding and is basically all year round these days. Like pilots and series get made at all different times of the year. And that pilot season traditionally will like continue to be blended across the entire calendar year until it doesn't exist in the same way that we used to know it anymore. But you see people come out and spend those months there, 3 months, 4 months, and not be able to get into the room because the cast member doesn't know them already, or they're doing self-tapes anyway. Right. So for years, it's already been moving towards more self-tape, especially on the LA side. I think New York cast members still see more people in person a lot of the time, but you can get those opportunities from here as well. So I agree with KaCee that you really have to be going because you really want to live there.
Yeah.
Just because of expectations for success that might magically come to you there.
Yeah, and unless you're so highly connected, going for a few months is so hard. I always tell people when they ask me how long should I go, I'm like, you need to just go and like be there.
Just go to go. Don't have any expectations out of it. Maybe take some classes while you're there, and go to be in LA and to experience what that's like, and hopefully garner a few in-person auditions. But I think also, like, as far as people who are going and who want to go, like this person who asked this question, clearly, I think the number one thing is just make sure your materials are competitive. And if you don't know if they are, you can ask multiple, ask your agent, ask casting director friends if you know people in casting, ask other actor friends, other actors who are doing well, who you respect, who you see working, who you see, active in the industry. Ask those friends, because if you can get, this is the business of opinion. So everyone is going to have like, oh, maybe you'll do this, maybe that, maybe shift this, maybe shift your TV credits above your film credits, and maybe that will attract more attention, like little tweaks here and there. But if you garner, if you gather a lot of people's feedback on your materials and it's overwhelmingly positive, then you're good. But also be prepared that when you get there, whatever representation you get is going to tell you to get new headshots anyway, because that's just how it works.
Okay, guys, it's game time. Okay.
Yes.
Are you guys ready to play? I know that you are. Don't forget that you can catch this talk later on ASC's Facebook page or their website. This game is called True or False. You think you guys know how to play it? You pick true or false, okay? Okay.
Got it.
True or false? KaCee's dad is a rock and roller musician.
True. I have the coolest dad in the universe.
It's totally true. Okay. True or false? Brittani never networks. Wah, wah, wah.
That's false.
Totally false. That girl, I'm
a little social.
It's awesome how you'll take the time to meet new actors and new people in the industry. And so, that's a big old fat lie. Okay. True or false? Bailey was named after the Irish liqueur.
Very, very false.
Totally false.
Very false. My mom had a coworker who had a baby named Bailey and just was like, oh, that's great, and then named me Bailey.
Excellent. Not the Irish liqueur. Okay. True or false?
Not the Irish liqueur.
True or false? Brittani is pregnant.
That is true. I am 7 months pregnant. All right, now. And I'm naming my baby Isla after a colleague's no significance other than a producer that I've been working with. His daughter's name is Isla. I heard the name and that was it.
Awesome.
Name is Bailey, and that's how I was named too.
I love that.
Congrats.
Thank you.
True or false? KaCee is getting married. We hope to play again so everything will run smoothly for you.
Hopefully before September 13th.
Okay. True or false? Bailey is actually my daughter. That's false.
No, that's false. But my mom is tuned into this webinar. So hi, Mom. I love you. I miss you.
Forget it. Forget
That's,
it.
I know. Very cute.
Okay, last question. This is for all of you. True or false? We're going to come back stronger after COVID-19.
Hell yeah, that's true.
That is, hell yes, it's
only thing to
absolutely
do.
true.
Absolutely true.
Yes, and because someday we will all travel when it's safe again, I'm going to say grazie to my industry guests. Thank you so much for tonight. I'm going to say arigato, Rachel Patterson, for all that you do. I'm going to say danke to the ASC teachers killing it right now. And I'm going to say merci beaucoup to all of you out there. Oui. Adios. That is a wrap, my friends. Thank you.
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Thank you for having us, Adria.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.